Next up, I'd like to introduce Paul Gollan and Chris Barth. Dr. Paul Gollan holds a PhD from the London School of Economics and is a Professor of Management and Associate Dean of Research in the Faculty of Business and Economics at Macquarie University. He has authored and co-edited 12 books in the fields of human resources and industrial relations. Paul is currently Chief Investigator for a large Australian Research Council grant, for which Voice Project are also involved in, investigating employee voice across industries. And that study, I believe, is one of the largest in the Australian university sector at the moment. Now, Paul will be interviewing Chris Barth, Executive Officer of the Suncorp Employee Council. Chris has been with Suncorp for 20 years, and prior to his appointment as Executive Officer was the Regional Manager of Business Customers in Townsville, North Queensland. So he is a Queenslander. We need to go easy on him, given how he might be feeling after Wednesday night. Chris's motivation for joining the Employee Council was to help make a difference in the working lives of fellow employees, and he's been doing so as an elected member of the committee for the past 10 years. So if I could ask you to please welcome both Paul and Chris.
Okay, hopefully people can hear me. Get Chris while he settles down there. Well, welcome. These sort of sessions, I was on a Q&A with Tony Jones the other week, so I was trying to get a few tips from him how to do this. I'm an academic, so I'm not a Tony Jones. So, but hopefully we can explore a few issues in what is a very unique institution in Australia. First off, but I'd like to acknowledge we've got some visitors here, which is great. We've got Professor Carl Koch from the UK, South Bank University, and we've got Jonathan Hamburger who's a Deputy Senior President of Fair Work Australia, which I'm not quite sure I'm supposed to mention nowadays. And I also have to be very careful. We have a HR Director from Macquarie University, so I need to be careful about that. So let us, we know a little bit about yourself, Chris, but what about the council? Tell us, how it was established?
I think just before we touch on that, I'd just like to, I guess, give people a little bit about Suncorp. I mean, most people will have heard Suncorp. The brand you may be more familiar with down here is perhaps GIO or AMI. You will have seen the sign going up down there on the old AAPT building a number of years ago now. Suncorp's one of the big three insurers in Australia and an ASX 25 company. Around about 15,000 employees in the group now across Australia. So that's a little bit about Suncorp. Within that, and this is probably the one that you're a little bit less familiar with, and some of you probably have never even heard of, the Employee Council. So I just wanted to give people a little bit of history on that to start with, so you get some sense for what that is. Over the years, I guess we've been compared to a number of different things. One of them is we've been called an internal union. Another one is we've been called a quasi-HR department. Other references have been made to the European model of works councils, whereby the works council exists in legislation, if you like. So all of those aren't quite right. So hopefully after today you'll have a bit more of an idea where we really actually sit and what we really actually do. Just to give people an idea, it actually started back in 1988 up in the great state of Queensland. There was only 800 employees at that time in a small regional bank called Macquarie Bank. Now, at the time, the CEO was looking to bring in a new agreement, workplace agreement or enterprise agreement, whatever you want to call it, with the employees. Now, rather than do it any other way, he thought he'd like to actually do that by talking direct to the employees. So he sought out an influential employee in the organisation, and together they basically formed this group to where it is today. And the whole idea of that, as I say, was so that really get that relationship between the organisation and the employees directly happening. So there was that aspect of it. So what happened, a small committee was formed, and they, if you like, were the precursor to the whole voice area where we're trying to move into today, where they'd meet as a group and provide feedback direct to the CEO in terms of, you know, what is happening in the organisation. That was one part of it. The other part of the role essentially was assisting employees in everyday workplace matters. And the way I describe it, I guess, is creating a level playing field. You know, when a leader and employee are meeting, the leader obviously has the support of the HR department, giving them advice, etc. The employee is often left on their own. So we, if you like, create that level playing field. where we're there to support and help the employee and collaboratively work through any issues that there are. So that's the role, how it started. It progressed. Obviously, there's been various mergers and acquisitions over the years, CEO changes, HR director changes, right through to now, current day, where we have 15,000 people, and where we actually, it's not just 2 people helping employees, it's not just a small committee, it's actually a whole group fully employed full-time, a mix of HR people, a mix of lawyers, psychologists, helping employees on an everyday basis deal with their individual issues, rather than that external lawyer that we may have used way back when to help employees. So that's one side of it. The voice side of it, and that's where we've involved in organisations like the Voice Project, doing work with Macquarie University, really trying to now work on, rather than just that group of employees that once met back in 1988 to provide feedback to the CEO, how we actually now embrace that voice concept. So that's the challenge for us, and that's why we're working with these other organisations to try and actually achieve that and make that work. So that gives a little bit of the history as we go through with some of the questions Paul asked. Hopefully that'll give a bit more of a picture of what we do.
Mentioning about issues, what are the most important issues, do you think, for the council?
I guess I can look at that from 2 fronts. One, if we look at what the team, the employee council team, what they are faced with, I guess, every day, and the team I'm talking about here, the ones that assist the employees on an everyday basis. You know, when that phone rings or someone walks through the door, they've got no idea what that issue is going to be about. It could be a simple policy query, right through to someone who's about to get sacked, someone who's committed fraud, you know, the range of things that can happen in the workplace. So they're then faced with, okay, that's the issue I'm dealing with, how do I do that, how do I work through it? They face issues of, you know, there's 2 sides to every story, so they've got to work through and establish somewhere in there where the facts and, you know, fiction is. So that's what they do in terms of the office team. So that's their role. But I guess in terms of Suncorp more broadly, some of the issues across there. Now we do a
because you've gone through a lot of mergers and acquisitions over the last 10 years or so.
That's right. So I guess what we do is a survey every year. We've been doing it for about 6 years now, and same questions that we ask each year. So there's some very good year-on-year data, and that goes out. Look, the sample size is roughly 6,000 people, so it's a good size number of people that actually respond. And through that, I guess the 3 key issues, and there's no surprises because most organisations would face the same: pay and benefits, work-life balance, and job security. Now, they, over the last 6 years, have been the 3 key issues. Obviously, little spikes during the GFC. Job security would have been up there ahead of the other 2, but those 3 were sort of more than double any of the other issues in terms of importance, in terms of what employees face every day. So that's based on some objective survey data.
When we're talking about consultation and information flows from management, I mean, the big issue here underlying this is an element of trust.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, how much do you believe the information that you're being given by the senior executives of Suncorp?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, I guess, and you can look at it subjectively and objectively. If I start with objectively, and once again going back to some survey data that we have, and one of the specific questions is, how believable is the information? How much do you trust the information you are provided? So that question put to the employees, traditionally and historically, 6 years, 67 to 73%. So that's over the last 6 years, 67 to 73% of employees trust and believe the information provided to them. So that's some objective data. I guess in terms of, you know, subjectively, the council, if you like, is really woven now into the fabric of the organisation. So there's so many different areas and that we get information from, whether it be from senior management, whether it be through the grapevine, whether it be formally. There's a lot of different ways. You know, the office team that I have, they're working every day with managers and leaders and HR departments, so they're getting information.
You also represent managers as well, don't
Correct,
you?
that's right.
Which is quite different from a lot of trade unions.
Exactly, yeah. So we get information come in there. Obviously, over 20 years, you form relationships with the organisation, so information coming from senior managers as well. So really there's a whole variety of sources, including they're actually required under the agreement we have with the organisation, if there's something impacting on more than 50 employees, they're required to discuss and consult with us. So there's a whole lot of formal and informal ways.
So you're not a trade union, so you're this council. Yep. I imagine there's a cost involved in operating the council. You've got quite a team. I mean, who finances this? Yep. How does it...
I guess that's the question that over the years we've ebbed and flowed between keeping it secret and not keeping it secret. But at the end of the day, the organisation funds what we do. I mean, if the organisation did not provide the funding, obviously we would have to charge memberships, etc. So we couldn't provide a service to 15,000 employees without doing that. So the organisation actually does provide the funding for us to do that. That's actually written into an agreement for that to occur. But I guess the important thing is that, you know, if someone's providing funding, you want to ensure that there's a degree of independence, even though that might seem a strange thing to say when they're providing it. But on a day-to-day basis, as long as there's no pressure or influence brought to bear on us and what we do, which to their credit they don't. If they did, the model would fall down. So I think that's the key aspect, is that yes, we are funded by the group. Employees know that. Employees have embraced that because the service we provide can speak for itself. So they're not concerned about that. Well, it means they don't have to pay a membership, for example. So
yeah, that's true. But it's quite interesting is that the way you mentioned that is sort of a lot of the activities that a HR department would do in some respects. Is that correct?
Correct. There is crossover in terms of what our group does and what the HR department do. But you know, on a daily basis, the team are working with the HR department to make sure that we get results. So they do work very closely together, and that's the way of